The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel Kolk, MD. Picture this, 4th of July weekend. The air's thick with barbecue smoke and the sweet smell of summer grass. Families are laughing, kids are running around with sparklers. But there's one guy, Tom, a successful lawyer, who's locked himself in his office with a bottle of whiskey. For him, those celebratory fireworks? They're not fireworks at all. His brain hears gunfire. That lush summer greenery outside his window transforms into the suffocating jungle of a Vietnamese rice paddy, where, a decade ago, he watched every single person in his platoon get killed or torn apart. Back at home, he's like a ghost in his own life. There's this invisible barrier between him and his wife, between him and his kids. When his own children play too loudly, he's gripped by this terrifying rage that makes him bolt from the house because he's genuinely afraid he might hurt them. At night, forget about rest. The nightmares come like clockwork. Dead children, dying friends, an endless loop of horror from 10 years ago that feels like it's happening right now. Here's the thing. On paper, Tom's got it all. Decorated Marine? Check. Law degree? Check. Beautiful family? Check. But inside, he feels completely hollow, like something died inside him in that jungle and never came back. His heart races for no reason. His muscles are always tensed like he's ready to fight. Rage erupts out of nowhere. And the worst part? He has absolutely no idea why he can't just move on. This is the puzzle we're diving into today. It's a mystery that Dr. Bessel Kolk, a brilliant psychiatrist and researcher, has dedicated his entire career to solving. His book, The Body Keeps the Score, isn't just another self-help bestseller that's sold millions of copies. It's actually a complete revolution in how we understand human suffering. Here's what we got wrong for decades. We thought trauma was basically a really bad memory. Something stuck in your head that you needed to talk through with a therapist. But what if that's only half the story? What if trauma doesn't just live in your memories, but actually gets lodged in your muscles, your nervous system, your hormones, even in the way you breathe? By the time we're done today, you're going to understand something profound about how your body and mind are tangled up together in ways you never imagined. You'll learn why traumatic experiences can leave people feeling fragmented and at war with themselves, and why just talking about it sometimes doesn't do a damn thing. But here's the really important part. You're also going to discover the evidence-based paths to healing that can help anyone, not just war veterans, but survivors of car accidents, childhood abuse, or neglect, actually leave the past in the past and reclaim their lives. This is a journey into what makes us fundamentally human, and it holds the key to not just surviving, but actually thriving. When young Dr. Kolk first met Tom at the Boston VA clinic in 1978, he did exactly what his medical training told him to do. He listened to Tom describe the nightmares and wrote him a prescription. 2 weeks later, Tom walked back into his office. He hadn't taken a single pill. Kolk was a bit annoyed. "Why not?" he asked. Tom's answer completely changed the trajectory of Kolk's career. He said, "I realized that if I take the pills and the nightmares go away, I will have abandoned my friends, and their deaths will have been in vain. I need to be a living memorial to my friends who died in Vietnam." In that moment, Kolk realized he wasn't just dealing with a chemical imbalance or a troublesome memory. He was facing a human soul, frozen in time, held prisoner by loyalty and horror. Tom's war hadn't ended when his plane touched down in America. It had moved inside his body and set up permanent residence. His entire life had reorganized itself around the trauma. This is the essence of what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. It's not about the story of what happened. It's about the body continuing to live, as if it's still happening right this second. To really get this, we need to take a trip inside the human brain. Think of your brain not as one single unit, but as three separate brains stacked on top of each other, each one representing a different stage of our evolution. At the very bottom, tucked into your brain stem, is the most ancient part, the reptilian brain. This is your survival autopilot. It handles the basics without you even thinking about them. Breathing, heartbeat, hunger, sleep. It's pure instinct, the part that's been running the show since the moment you were born. It doesn't think or analyze, it just reacts. Sitting above that is the mammalian brain, what scientists call the limbic system. This is your emotional headquarters. It's your brain's built-in smoke detector, constantly scanning everything around you and asking one simple question: am I safe right now, or am I in danger? This is where joy, love, fear, and rage come from. It's what connects you to other people, what makes you bond with your parents and want to protect your kids. And finally, perched on top like a crown, is the newest part, the neocortex. This is your rational, thinking brain, the part that makes you distinctly human. Language lives here, along with abstract thinking and planning for the future. This is the part of your brain that's listening to me right now, making sense of these words and ideas. The neocortex is like a watchtower that can look down at the raw emotions bubbling up from below and say, okay, I feel angry right now, but I'm not actually going to punch this person. I'm going to take a deep breath and use my words. Under normal circumstances, these three brains work together like a beautiful symphony. The watchtower keeps an eye on the smoke detector, and the survival machine just keeps the engine humming. But when trauma strikes, this beautiful harmony collapses into complete chaos. When you're faced with an overwhelming threat, a violent car crash, a physical assault, the horrors of combat, the reptilian and mammalian brains completely take over. The watchtower, your rational brain, goes dark. And it has to. In a life-or-death moment, you don't have the luxury of time to analyze and think. You need to react instantly. Your body gets flooded with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, preparing you for one of three survival responses: fight, flight, or freeze. Your heart starts pounding like a drum. Your muscles tense up. Your breathing gets rapid and shallow. This is your body's ancient, brilliantly designed survival system, doing exactly what it's supposed to do. If you manage to fight off your attacker or run to safety, your body will eventually burn through those stress hormones, and your brain will gradually return to normal. The watchtower comes back online. The terrifying event becomes a story, a memory of something awful that happened in the past. But what happens when you can't escape? What if you're a small child being held down by an adult who's much bigger than you? What if you're a soldier trapped under enemy fire with nowhere to run? This is what researchers call inescapable shock. When your natural survival actions get blocked, your body keeps pumping out those stress hormones, but they have nowhere to go. The alarm system gets stuck in the on position. Your body never gets the signal that the danger has passed. And this is the dark secret of trauma. The body keeps fighting a war that already ended. Dr. van der Kolk and his research team wanted to actually see this happening in real time. Using cutting-edge brain imaging technology, they conducted a groundbreaking experiment. They invited people with PTSD to lie down in a brain scanner. Then they played a recording, a script describing their personal traumatic experience in vivid detail. What they witnessed was absolutely stunning. The instant the script started playing, the emotional brain, the limbic system, lit up like a pinball machine. The amygdala, that smoke detector we talked about, started screaming at full volume, "Danger! Danger! Danger!" The patient's heart rate shot up. Their blood pressure spiked. Physiologically, Their bodies were reacting as if the trauma were happening all over again, right there in that scanner. But here's the most shocking discovery. A crucial part of the rational brain had gone completely dark. Specifically, a region called Broca's area, one of the brain's main speech centers, had essentially shut down. This is the biological reality behind the phrase speechless terror. When you're reliving trauma, you are literally, physically unable to put your feelings into words. You might scream, you might sob, but you can't actually articulate the experience in language. The part of your brain that creates coherent stories and narratives is offline. This explains why so many trauma survivors struggle to talk about what happened to them. It's not that they're unwilling or being difficult. Their brain literally won't let them. The trauma isn't stored as a nice, neat story with a beginning, middle, and end. Instead, it's stored as fragmented sensory snapshots. A terrifying image frozen in time. The smell of alcohol on someone's breath. The physical sensation of being held down. The sound of breaking glass. These aren't really memories in the traditional sense. They're flashbacks. They don't feel like something from your past. They feel like something happening right now, in this very moment. The brain scans revealed another fascinating clue. During a flashback, the right side of the brain showed intense activity, while the left side went quiet. The right brain is your intuitive, emotional, nonverbal brain. It thinks in images, sounds, and raw feelings. The left brain is your logical, analytical, language-based brain. It organizes experiences into sequences and creates the stories you tell about your life. In trauma, the left brain, your inner storyteller, gets knocked unconscious, and the right brain, your emotional sensor, completely takes over. People become trapped in the pure, raw, unprocessed experience of the trauma itself. This leads to two devastating patterns. Some people, like Tom the veteran, live in a constant state of hyperarousal. They're jumpy and easily startled, irritable for no apparent reason, prone to explosive rage. Their internal smoke detector is always screaming, seeing threats absolutely everywhere, even when they're completely safe. But there's another response that's equally damaging: dissociation. This is what happened to a woman named Ute, who survived a horrific 87-car pileup on the highway. When she was placed in the brain scanner and listened to the script describing the accident, her brain did the complete opposite of what you'd expect. Instead of lighting up with fear and panic, almost every area of her brain went dark. She went completely numb. Her brain simply shut down, like pulling the plug on a computer. This is the freeze response, nature's last-ditch survival mechanism. When fighting or running aren't options, the body's final emergency plan is to play dead. It's an extreme form of disconnection. People who dissociate describe feeling like they're watching their own life from a great distance, as if they're a character in a movie. They feel unreal, completely detached from their bodies and emotions. This was what allowed you to psychologically survive the unbearable terror of that car crash, but it left her feeling empty and disconnected from life itself. So you've got these two extremes, being completely overwhelmed and flooded by emotion, or feeling absolutely nothing at all. Most trauma survivors don't stay at one extreme. They swing back and forth between the two, living on a pendulum between chaos and numbness. And here's the thing. The roots of this problem, van der Kolk argues, often begin long before any car crash or battlefield. They frequently begin in childhood, in the very relationships that are supposed to keep us safe and help us grow. We're born completely helpless, utterly dependent on our caregivers for everything. Our brains aren't pre-programmed like a computer. They're actually sculpted by our earliest experiences. A baby's sense of safety and emotional regulation is built through this beautiful rhythmic dance with their parent, a process researchers call attunement. Imagine a mother gazing at her baby and cooing softly. The baby smiles back. The mother's voice rises in a playful, sing-song tone. The baby kicks its little legs in excitement. Their heartbeats start to synchronize. Their breathing patterns match up. Even their brainwaves begin to align. In this simple but profound dance, the baby's developing brain learns a fundamental lesson that will shape their entire life. I am seen. I am understood. I matter. I am safe. This secure attachment becomes the foundation, the launching pad, from which a child can confidently explore the world. But what happens when that dance gets disrupted, or never happens at all? What if the parent is severely depressed, or struggling with addiction, or overwhelmed by their own unhealed trauma? What if they're neglectful, or unpredictable, or even worse, abusive? The baby's brain learns a completely different lesson. It learns that the world is fundamentally dangerous and unpredictable. It learns that its cries for help will be ignored, or met with anger instead of comfort. It learns that the very person it depends on for survival is also a source of terror. This creates an impossible, unsolvable dilemma for a child. When a scared animal is in danger, it runs home to safety. But what if home is the scariest place of all? The child can't fight back effectively. They can't flee. So their brain does the only thing it can. It adapts in unhealthy ways. They learn to shut down emotionally, to dissociate from their own feelings. They learn to ignore their own bodily sensations and needs, because those feelings are simply too unbearable to face. They develop what attachment researchers call disorganized attachment. They might be desperately clingy one moment and violently aggressive the next. They can't figure out how to consistently get their needs met. Their internal alarm system is permanently set to high alert, and their ability to regulate their own emotions is severely compromised from the very beginning. This isn't just abstract psychological theory. It has profound, measurable biological consequences. This is exactly what the landmark Adverse Childhood Experiences study, the ACE study, revealed to a shocked medical community. Researchers asked over 17,000 adults 10 straightforward questions about their childhood experiences, things like physical or sexual abuse, emotional neglect, or growing up with a parent who was an alcoholic, depressed, or mentally ill. The results were absolutely shocking. Adverse childhood experiences turned out to be incredibly common, even in this mostly white, educated, middle-class population. And the higher a person's ACE score, the dramatically higher their risk for a whole range of serious problems in adulthood. Not just depression and suicide attempts, but also alcoholism, drug addiction, obesity, heart disease, cancer, and liver disease. The trauma of childhood literally gets written into our biology. The body truly does keep the score. A person who was abused as a child doesn't just carry around a painful memory. They have a body that has been fundamentally shaped and wired for a world of constant danger. Their nervous system operates on perpetual high alert. Their stress hormone levels are chronically out of balance. Even their immune system can be compromised, making them more vulnerable to illness. This brings us to what van der Kolk calls the unbearable heaviness of remembering. If trauma is stored as fragmented sensations and overwhelming emotions rather than as a coherent story, how do people ever make sense of what happened to them? Van der Kolk shares the haunting story of Julian, a young man who was sexually abused by a priest when he was a child. For over a decade, he had seemingly forgotten about the abuse entirely. He just knew he hated his own body, that he struggled terribly in school, and that he felt a deep sense of shame about himself without understanding why. Then one day, his girlfriend casually mentioned a news story about that same priest being under investigation for abuse. Suddenly, without warning, Julian was plunged into complete panic. He had a flash of a single image, the priest's silhouette in a doorway. Over the following week, his mind was absolutely flooded with fragments. The red velvet cushion in a back room at the church. The physical sensation of being violated. The priest's face looming over him. There was no coherent narrative, just a chaotic storm of images, bodily sensations, and overwhelming terror. He started having what looked like seizures. He genuinely felt like he was losing his mind. This is what happens when dissociated memories break through to consciousness. They don't return as a neat, organized story you can tell someone. They return as a chaotic, terrifying replay of the original traumatic event. The body relives the experience in real time. This is precisely why the traditional talking cure by itself so often fails with trauma. You simply cannot talk your body out of what it's feeling at a visceral level. You can understand, intellectually, with your rational brain, that the past is over and you're safe now. But your emotional brain, that smoke detector, is still screaming that the building's on fire. You can't reason with a fire alarm that's going off. You have to find a way to actually reset it. So how do we do that? This is where the book becomes truly hopeful and revolutionary. Van der Kolk argues passionately that healing from trauma absolutely must involve working directly with the body. We need what he calls bottom-up approaches that can actually change our visceral, physical experience, as well as top-down approaches that engage our thinking minds. One of the most powerful bottom-up approaches turns out to be yoga. He tells the remarkable story of Annie, a woman so terrified by her childhood abuse that she could barely speak in sessions or make eye contact with anyone. Her body was essentially a prison of tension and fear. She decided to try yoga, and at first, it was absolutely terrifying. Simply being in certain vulnerable postures triggered intense flashbacks. But she kept going back. In yoga, you're gently encouraged to pay attention to your body in the present moment, to notice the rhythm of your breath, to actually feel the sensations in your muscles as you move and stretch. For someone who has spent their entire lifetime trying desperately to ignore and disconnect from their body, this is a profoundly radical act. Annie wrote to her therapist after a few months, "This week I tried doing yoga at home, and these words came to me. Your body has things to say. I said back to myself, I will try and listen." Yoga teaches you to tolerate your own physical sensations without panicking or dissociating. You learn experientially that feelings, just like yoga poses, are temporary. They rise, they peak, they become intense, and then they gradually fall away. By choosing to stay present with the physical discomfort of holding a challenging pose, you learn something profound. You can endure difficult sensations. This builds a genuine sense of mastery over your own body. It teaches your brain at a deep level that you can have intense physical sensations and still be fundamentally safe. You learn to befriend the body that you once saw as your worst enemy. Brain imaging studies have now confirmed that regular yoga practice can actually change your brain structure, increasing activity in the areas responsible for regulating emotion and building self-awareness. Another fascinating approach that works directly with the brain's electrical wiring is something called neurofeedback. This sounds like science fiction, but it's remarkably straightforward. You have small electrodes placed on your scalp that simply read your brain's electrical activity, your brain waves. Those brain waves are translated in real time into a simple video game on a screen in front of you. When your brain produces calm, focused brain waves, you make the spaceship in the game move forward smoothly. When your brain becomes agitated or scattered, the spaceship stops moving or crashes. Your brain, without any conscious effort or strategy on your part, naturally wants to win the game. It wants that reward. So it gradually starts to figure out, through trial and error, how to produce more of the calm, focused brain waves that make the game work. You are literally training your brain to regulate itself, the same way you might train a muscle at the gym. Kolk shares the incredible transformation of Lisa, a young woman who was so severely traumatized by her psychotic, abusive mother that she spent her entire adolescence cycling in and out of mental hospitals, cutting herself, and dissociating so badly that she didn't even know who she was anymore. Traditional talk therapy was completely impossible for her because she was too chaotic and fragmented to engage with it. After beginning neurofeedback training, her brain gradually began to stabilize and calm down. The constant background hum of anxiety started to fade. She stopped associating from herself. For the first time in her life, she felt stable and present enough to actually talk about her traumatic past without falling apart. She said, "Neurofeedback freed me up to live my life the way I want to, because I'm not always in the grip of how I was hurt and what it did to me." She went on to graduate at the very top of her nursing school class, something that would have been completely unimaginable just a few years earlier. While these bottom-up methods help calm the body and stabilize the brain, we still need effective ways to actually process the traumatic memories themselves, to transform them from raw, unprocessed flashbacks into integrated memories. This is where a therapy called EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, comes into play. This is another therapy that sounds completely bizarre, but has been proven through rigorous research to be remarkably effective. In EMDR, a person deliberately calls to mind a specific traumatic memory while simultaneously following the therapist's finger as it moves back and forth across their field of vision. For reasons that neuroscientists don't yet fully understand, these bilateral eye movements seem to somehow unlock the brain's own natural information processing system. It almost mimics the rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, that our brains use every single night to process and integrate the day's experiences and emotions. Through this process, the traumatic memory doesn't disappear or get erased, but its overwhelming emotional charge gets neutralized. It becomes integrated into the larger narrative of your life. It transforms from a terrifying present-day reality that's constantly replaying into simply a memory of something difficult that happened to you in the past. Kolk tells the story of David, a construction contractor whose eye was violently stabbed out with a broken beer bottle when he was a young man in a bar fight. For 30 years after that attack, he was haunted by vivid flashbacks and struggled with uncontrollable rage that damaged every relationship in his life. After just a handful of EMDR sessions, the memory finally lost its stranglehold on him. He described it by saying, "I remember it happening, but it felt more distant somehow. Typically, I would just drown in it completely, but this time I was floating on top of it." The memory was finally, truly processed and integrated. But healing isn't just about calming your nervous system and processing traumatic memories. It's also fundamentally about reconnecting with other human beings. Trauma destroys what's called the social engagement system, the neurological mechanisms that make us feel human and connected to others. This is where communal activities like theater can be surprisingly powerful. In theater, you absolutely have to be present in your body. You have to synchronize your movements, your voice, your emotions with other people on stage. You get to step into the shoes of another character and safely experience their emotions and their story in a structured, supportive environment. For traumatized kids who feel invisible, powerless, and worthless, being part of a cast, working together to create something meaningful, and then being seen and genuinely applauded by an audience can be a profoundly transformative experience of agency, competence, and belonging. Finally, we need to address the complex inner landscape of our minds. A therapeutic approach called internal family systems, or IFS, offers a fascinating way to think about this. It views the mind as being made up of different parts, almost like a family living inside you. We all have these parts operating within us. One part of you might be incredibly ambitious and driven to succeed. Another part might just want to curl up on the couch and binge-watch TV shows. One part might be the responsible caretaker, while another part is the rebellious teenager. In trauma, these internal parts become extreme and go to war with each other. There are what IFS calls the exiles, the young, vulnerable, wounded parts that hold all the unbearable pain and shame from the trauma. Then there are the managers, the protective parts that work overtime to keep those painful exiles locked away in the basement. They do this by making you into a perfectionist, or a people pleaser, or emotionally numb. And then there are the firefighters, the emergency responders that jump into desperate action whenever an exile threatens to break through. They try to douse the pain with things like binge eating, drinking, drug use, or self-harm. The goal of IFS therapy isn't to get rid of these parts or judge them as bad. It's to understand them with curiosity and compassion, to realize that every single part, even the most seemingly destructive one, started out with the positive intention of protecting you from overwhelming pain. The therapy helps you access what IFS calls the self, the calm, compassionate, curious, confident core of your being that's always been there underneath all the noise. From this grounded place of self, you can actually listen to your parts, understand their fears and their pain, and gradually heal the wounded exiles. You become the wise, compassionate leader of your own internal family, bringing all your parts into harmony instead of constant conflict. Healing from trauma is definitely a journey, not a destination. There's no magic pill, no single technique or therapy that works perfectly for everyone. It's about gradually restoring a sense of ownership and agency over your own body and your own mind. It's about finding effective ways to become calm and focused when you need to be. It's about learning to be fully alive and present in this moment, not trapped in the past. And it's about finding the courage to connect authentically with other people, to find your voice and use it, and to realize that you're not alone in your pain. As Bessel van der Kolk shows us so powerfully, the human spirit is remarkably, almost miraculously resilient. Yes, the body keeps the score of what's happened to us, but it also holds within it the key to our healing. By learning to listen to its language, by gradually befriending its sensations instead of fighting them, and by gently guiding it back to a felt sense of safety and connection, we can finally come home to ourselves. As we wrap up our journey through The Body Keeps the Score, I find myself sitting with this profound mix of gravity and genuine hope. This isn't just another book about trauma or mental health. It's really a book about what it fundamentally means to be human. It's a detailed map of our deepest vulnerabilities, but at the same time, it's an inspiring testament to our incredible capacity for healing and resilience. For anyone standing on the threshold of building their life, This book offers a lesson that's absolutely essential. Your relationship with your own body is quite literally the foundation of your entire existence. In a world that constantly yanks our attention outward, to screens, to achievements, to social media, to what other people think of us, Kolk calls us back home, to the inner landscape of our physical selves. He reminds us that our gut feelings, our heartaches, and our moments of joy aren't just poetic metaphors. They're biological realities, real physical events happening in our bodies. Our bodies are constantly communicating with us, sending us vital signals about what feels safe, what seems dangerous, what nourishes us, and what drains us. The real tragedy of trauma is that it deafens us to that essential inner voice. The most powerful insight I take from this work is this radical shift, moving from seeing trauma symptoms as a sign of weakness or personal failure to understanding them as brilliant, albeit painful, adaptations that helped us survive the unsurvivable. The rage, the emotional numbness, the dissociation, these aren't character defects or signs that something's wrong with who you are. They're actually tools that a desperate organism used to endure something that felt unendurable. When we look at ourselves or others through this lens of compassion and understanding, absolutely everything changes. Blame and shame give way to curiosity. Harsh judgment gives way to genuine understanding. The question shifts from, "What's wrong with you?" to, "What happened to you, and how did you manage to survive it?" This book represents a quiet revolution because it fundamentally empowers us. It tells us that we have far more influence over our inner states than we ever imagined possible. We're not simply passive victims at the mercy of our brain chemistry or our traumatic past. Through accessible practices like conscious breathing, intentional movement, and mindful awareness of our bodies, we can literally change the structure and function of our brains. We can learn to calm our own overactive alarm systems. We can restore our sense of being in charge of our own lives. This isn't a message of weakness or dependence. It's a message of profound personal power and agency. So how can you start applying these powerful ideas in your own life, starting right now, today? First, try this simple exercise. Just for the next 60 seconds, bring your complete attention to your breath. Don't try to change it or control it. Just notice it with curiosity. Feel the air coming in through your nose or mouth. Feel it going back out. Feel your feet making contact with the floor beneath you. Feel the weight and presence of your body in your chair or wherever you're sitting. This simple act of noticing, of paying attention to your internal experience, is the first step in what the book calls interoception, the awareness of your inner physical and emotional world. It's the beginning of befriending your body instead of being at war with it. Try doing this for just 1 minute each day and notice what happens. Second, start practicing the language of parts. The next time you feel a strong, overwhelming emotion, maybe anxiety before a big presentation, or anger at a friend who disappointed you, instead of saying, "I am anxious," or "I am furious," try saying to yourself, "A part of me feels anxious right now." This simple shift in language creates a tiny bit of psychological space, just enough room to breathe. It reminds you that you are not the emotion that's washing over you. You are the one who's noticing and experiencing the emotion. You are that calm, curious self at the center, ultimately capable of leading and caring for all your different parts. And third, move your body with intention and awareness. Trauma traps us in patterns of immobility, tension, and fear. The antidote is conscious, empowered action. This doesn't have to mean signing up for a formal yoga class or joining a gym. It can be as simple as going for a walk and paying real attention to the feeling of your feet hitting the pavement with each step. It can be stretching for 5 minutes in the morning and noticing which muscles feel tight or sore. It can be putting on your favorite song and giving yourself permission to dance for 3 minutes in your living room. Any action that makes you feel powerful, present, and genuinely alive in your own skin is an act of healing. That was a summary of The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. We've touched on some of the major landmarks and key ideas of this incredible work today, but I have to be completely honest with you. Experiencing a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country you've never visited. The map can show you where the mountains and rivers are located, but it can never replace the actual experience of walking those trails yourself, breathing that air, and feeling the water on your skin. The real magic of this book unfolds in the detailed stories, the nuanced science, and the profound sense of compassion that builds page after page. This summary is designed to help you figure out if this is a journey worth taking for yourself. If anything we've discussed today has sparked a sense of recognition or genuine curiosity in you, I really encourage you to pick up a copy and read it cover to cover. Reading it isn't just about gaining information or knowledge. It's a genuine experience that can change the way you understand yourself and the people around you. Also, if you found this exploration valuable and worthwhile, I'd be really grateful if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps us reach more curious minds like yours, and it ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another potentially life-changing book. Let's continue this journey of learning and growing together.